Good morning, boys and girls. It's week 3 on our walk and talk in the wilderness. It's easier to think about the wilderness in the summertime. I bet you have gone outside and enjoyed the nice sunny weather in the past week. But when we talk about the hot weather in the wilderness, I mean really, really hot. Some of you have been in countries in Asia where it's both hot and humid, which makes everybody feel quite sticky and probably smelly too. I don't think the Israelites had the choice to go inside a building to take a rest like we would after a long day of being out in the sun. After 3 days of walking, they finally made a stop. They came to Mount Sinai and they camped there. Well, you might ask, for what? You see, God led his people to a great mountain because he had a great promise for them. Some were special for a special promise. Before Mount Sinai, God met Moses through the burning bush. That story you know. But the people of Israel have not actually met or heard from God themselves up to this point. The God who had sent all the plagues, who split the seas and wiped Pharaoh and his armies out and led them by a pillar of cloud and fire. Who was this God? I like to think about it as a very special meetup. If you're going to meet your best friend or your favorite teacher, you probably would get a little nervous too. Imagine yourself meeting someone super important, maybe like your favorite movie star, the queen, or even the prime minister, and that they're going to give you a speech and they're going to talk about something that's very important. The Israelites were just like that. God was going to speak, and they stopped and got ready to listen. They've never met God and have very little knowing of who he is and what he's like. An Israelite kid at the time would probably ask the same question that you're probably thinking about.
What is God like? Does it have mustache? Or does it have a high voice? What will meeting God be like? Is it big and tall like my dad or my uncle? Does it ride on rainbows and surrounded by singing angels?
Those are some very good questions, Elmo. In the book of Exodus, it describes that God is indeed very powerful. We may not know exactly what his face looks like, but we know that God is very, very powerful. So powerful that the thick clouds surrounded Mount Sinai. Thunder roared and lightning flashed. Heavy smoke from fire like ones in a furnace, and the mountain was about to erupt like a volcano. Even the nature shows his respect to our God. Our God is mighty and powerful. Now, even though God was mighty and powerful, he didn't come to harm or destroy like the evil characters in our movies. He came to meet his people. He was going to speak to them and tell them about who he is so they can know him better. Let's go to the Bible to see what actually happens. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 19, verse 4 to 6. And it says, "Every one of you has seen what I did to the people of Egypt," the Lord said. "You saw how I carried you out of Egypt. I did as an eagle carries her young on her wings, and I brought you here to me. So now obey me and keep my agreement. Do this, and you will be my own possession, chosen from all nations. Even though the whole earth is mine, you will be my kingdom of priests. You will be a nation that belongs to me alone." This was what the Lord told Moses to tell the people of Israel. God was giving his great promise that Israel would be a treasured possession and that they would be a blessing to other nations. This week, I encourage you to think about God as your special person. Sometimes we make short stops in our walks just so we can listen to God and his word. He speaks to us and reminds us of his great promise that he will never leave us. There's another Bible verse that talks about mountains and promises, and that reminds me of how God doesn't leave us. Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 54, verse 10. And it says, "The mountains may disappear, and the hills may come to an end, but my love will never disappear. My promise of peace will not come to an end, says the Lord who shows mercy to you." Well, mountains never just disappear into thin air overnight. Well, if your house is like mine, you might be able to open your windows and just see how beautiful the mountains are. And it's not like they're just gonna get up and walk away after a night. Well, God says that it's even more impossible for his love to leave his people. God uses the picture of a mountain to show us that his promise will not come to an end. He will always be with us. I'm not sure how your summer is going so far, sunny days or cloudy days, fun days and boring days, I want to encourage you that it's okay to stop, slow down, and just wait for God. Tell God that you want a special meet up with Him. Ask Him to come meet you in a special place. It would be great if you can have the Bible next to you and pick a few verses by yourself or with your parents, just so that you can get to know God a little bit more each day. Now, I hope you get your maps ready, because the drawing this week gets even better. If you have just joined us this week, we are making our maps in the walks of wilderness with symbols and markers to remind us of what God has done for the Israelites and His promise to all of us. This map helps us to remember how we can worship Him today. As we walk in the wilderness, we can follow, we can trust in God's lead, and we can listen to His word. Now, let's get to our map.
Map, 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 map! Pencil, pencil, ready, go! Start from our last red point, we draw dotted lines across. Draw a small triangle and a bigger triangle next to it. Then near the top, we're going to draw some squiggly lines. On top of the mountains, we are drawing a cloud. And then draw a circle all around it. There it is, Mount Sinai. Yay!
Well, thanks for joining me and Elmo in our walk and talk in the wilderness. I'm so glad to be able to worship with you all today. And I'll see you next week.